I sued my boss because he fired me for wanting to attend a concert, posted by Vicoding. During my gap year between studies, I decided to work for Company N. Company N was run by a husband, Dave, and wife, Karen, with their son, and basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months until I realized I had to take a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from the Karen, and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused to say the least. Not sure what to do. I thought she wanted a more formal way of asking, so I wrote a formal email asking for a day off. She shot an email back, and I really had to think through what I was doing, which made even less sense to me. But I was hopeful since I never really got a specific no. The next work day rolls around, and I arrive, lock up my bike, and head inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Hey, do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this, so I quickly answered yes. The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest and you can go home." I was stunned, and when the words started to sink in, I looked at my colleagues who were just preparing for opening. When it finally sank in, anger flowed in. I'm not a confrontational person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word, I left and started biking home. When I got back home, I told my mother what had happened. We started sending emails for extra information and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple emails, which basically went nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it, I learned that, in my country, somebody can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, frauding, the person isn't able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later, I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company N. I told my lawyer what happened in detail, and he was very confident that I was in my right and she was not. So after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow, and Karen showed up, alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began, and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same. Well, for about half the trial. When she realized that evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat, among other things I don't know the English translation for. It's safe to say that was the point that the judge ruled in my favor. As per usual, I had to wait about a month before I got the verdict black on white in the mail, but I won! It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account, but it was 100% worth it. In the end, I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and profitable concert I have ever been to in my life. This was back in the early 2000s when vapes were barely heard of. Basically, most shops didn't stock them yet, and people were thinking it was a gimmick that would run its course. In fact, most people hadn't even heard of vapes. It was that early. Here in the UK, the job centers would pass people that are having the highest difficulty getting into work onto third-party agencies to teach them basic skills and so on. I was sent to one such agency, and this is where we encountered an entitled person. This agency was a simple one. They had one main room and 3 private rooms. The private rooms basically contained a small table and 2 chairs so that you can talk privately with your assigned member of staff. The main room was all in one. At the front was the reception desk and a few chairs to sit and wait after signing in. Spanning the opposite side of the room along the windows were the staff's office desks. Then, going most of the length of the room, down the middle, was a row of computers for customers to use for job search or typing up CVs, etc. I had arrived, signed in, and was waiting at the reception to be called for. After a few minutes, I saw a guy about my age sat at one of the computers, and there was smoke coming from him whenever he lifted his hand to his face. As this was early vaping days, the smoke was no thicker than a regular cigarette, and it wasn't scented like these days, so you'd mistaken for smoking an actual cigarette. I knew straight away that he was smoking. So I quickly told the receptionist, who looked over, saw the smoke, and then went to talk to him. The receptionist says, "Excuse me, you're not allowed to smoke in here." The guy says, "I'm not smoking." He shows her the vape. "It doesn't matter, you're not allowed to smoke in here. Please put it away." The guy puts it away and the receptionist returns to her desk. 5 minutes later, my advisor comes over to get me, and just as I stood up to follow, I noticed the smoke coming from the guy again and pointed it out to my advisor, who promptly went over to him. "Excuse me, but can you please put that cigarette out? You're not allowed to smoke in the buildings by law." "I'm not smoking, see?" He shows my advisor the vape. "Whether it's a cigarette, a cigar, whatever the thing is, it's not allowed in here." "But I'm not smoking," he continues to puff on the vape. It doesn't matter whether you're smoking a cigarette or not. Look, I'm not trying to argue with you. Either stop smoking or we'll inform the job center of your actions. Fine. He puts his vape away. After that, I went with my advisor to talk about things. If you think this is the end of the guy, you're mistaken. This agency was in an office block with several other businesses. I had to leave my task to go to the toilet when I saw the guy wasn't at his computer, but his things were. As I went to the toilet, which was out of the office and down the corridor, I saw the guy stood in a corner of the hallway, puffing away. When I'd done my business and returned to my assigned computer, I stopped by my advisor's desk and told him what I saw. He looked angry and started going around the other staff and telling them what was happening. One advisor looked through his computer for something, made a few quick notes on paper before logging him out. Another two advisors gathered his belongings and left the room towards him. The advisor who logged out the computer went onto her own machine and started working away. 5 minutes later, the other two returned, but without the guy. I asked my advisor what happened. Basically, they told the guy to take his stuff and leave. They will be contacting the job center about his actions and wouldn't be surprised if they dock his benefits or something. Nevertheless, the following week when I went back, there were printed notices next to the no smoking signs which said in big letters, "No vaping allowed." I never saw that guy again before the staff started passing me from pillar to post because they couldn't figure out how to help me get into work due to my health problems. They quickly switched to phone appointments where they just call me to ask how I'm feeling. It's interesting how things change over the years as they become more accepted in the workplace and other areas, but still have their discrepancies and their things against them. What do you think? Should this guy have been allowed to do this? You want the exact amount? You get the exact amount. Posted by CrackSnap7. When I was 13 or 14, I decided that I wanted a PS3. My dad refused to buy me one, but my uncle made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. He said that if I worked at his sweet shop for the 2 months of summer break, he would buy me a PS3 and some games in lieu of payment. For teenage me with no commitments, this seemed fantastic. My uncle sold a kind of specialty snack known as a mini samosa in his shop. They're like samosas, but smaller, about 3.5 to 4 centimeters in size, which is about 1 in 2,286 of a football field for my American friends. They were sold by weight in sealed packs of 250 grams and 500 grams, as these were the most common amounts that people bought. Making those packages turned out to be my job. You see, sometime between now and when my uncle first started his business, he realized that 250 grams was roughly the weight of 28 mini samosas, and thus 56 were 500 grams. So instead of weighing each packet, I was just told to pack by counting individual items, which was easier and saved time. We also sold them individually for people who wanted larger, smaller, or unusual amounts. This was also around the time when our government started airing customer awareness PSAs. Basically, just telling customers to beware fraudulent business people. This is relevant. So, one particularly hot afternoon, it was just me and my uncle at the shop. In India, frequent power cuts were very common during summers, and thus there were no fans or AC running. Both tempers and temperatures were running high at the shop that day. It was then that the villain of our story, Mr. Karen, made his entry. He was a local resident and a regular. He seemed angry from the onset when he barged into the shop. He took a look at the fans and saw that they weren't running, and then angrily picked up a 500-gram pack of samosas and said, "How many samosas are in this thing?" "That's 500 grams, I said. I said how many, not how much. Mr. Karen literally screamed, "Again, how many in this?" 56, I replied immediately since, I packed them. "How can you be so sure? You didn't even count. You're trying to cheat me." Mr. Karen was now in full-scale Karen mode. "I demand that you pack me 500 grams of those individual ones, and don't you dare cheat me again." I looked over at my uncle, wet with sweat, fanning himself with yesterday's newspaper. He slowly nodded. I beamed with a huge smile. "Sure, sir, whatever you want." So I took a bag, picked up some samosas, and started putting them on the balance. I kept counting samosas as I put them in until they were a little over 500 grams. Then I removed the last samosa and the weight fell below 500. Now, keeping eye contact with Mr. Karen, I crushed the samosa and started putting its powdery remains in the bag until it was exactly 500 grams. But wait, there's more. Mr. Karen apparently didn't seem to mind powdered samosa, but instead asked smugly, "So, how many samosas now?" 48, I claimed triumphantly. You see, sometime in the past, my uncle's old chef retired and the new chef made samosas with a little bit more filling in them. They looked the same size on the outside and only weighed a couple grams more each, and since he made them in bulk and also sold to other shops in the area, the price wasn't too much of an issue. So my uncle let it slide. But those couple grams added up on mass orders, and that is what Mr. Karen found out the hard way. He looked sheepishly at the pre-packed samosas and then at his own package and asked if he could buy the former instead. No, my nephew made a package specially for you at your own request, so that is what you have to buy, my uncle finally spoke. Mr. Karen silently took his pack, paid, and left. He was a lot more respectful during his subsequent visits. I was reminded of this story yesterday when my PS3 finally died. As evident, English is not my first language. In fact, it's not even my third, so please excuse any mistakes. Am I the a-hole for pretending to get fired when customers get a temper with me? Posted by You Throw RA and Letters. I'm a high schooler with a weekend job at a coffee shop. My coworkers who work weekends are James, the owner's son. He goes to my school. He's a shift manager, but it's not a real formal thing. He's a friendly guy. And Danielle, a college student who sometimes works weekends too. So sometimes customers will come in and just be angry about such little stuff, like literally blow up about nothing. I don't know if they're in a bad mood already and they're looking for someone to take it out on or what, but it's a lot. Like, how sad do you have to be a grown man taking your anger out on high school and college kids? So James and I were joking about having a little fun with them and hopefully getting them off our backs. So one day I was at work and some guy was having a temper about how we don't make the coffee hot enough, which I couldn't do a thing about because I gave it to him right out of the machine. So James came in and he was like, "Sir, is there a problem here?" And the guy started ranting at him too. So he was just like, "This is unacceptable. You're fired." I started acting real sad, like, "No, please don't fire me. My family needs the money. I need this job, please." And he played it up like being hard, telling me to take off my apron and leave. The angry guy started to backtrack like, "It's not that big of a problem. You don't need to fire her over it. I didn't mean it." And James was like, "No, we pride ourselves on the best customer service." Of course, after all that drama, I still have my job. We were just acting. And we've done it a couple times. Whenever a customer will lose their temper at Danielle or I, James will storm in and fire us. And almost every time, the person who would come in angry will apologize and say that they didn't really mean it. It's kind of satisfying making people realize their actions might actually have consequences. Anyway, I was telling my friends from school about this, and a few of them thought it was a mean prank to let someone go away thinking they'd gotten someone who desperately needs the money fired. Am I the a-hole for this joke? This could go either way. A lot of people would say no, you were not, and give you a 0 out of 10. Actually, that's what most people would think. It's a pretty interesting prank to see. Am I the a-hole for going too far with my punishment? Posted by Substantial Camel 598. My daughter is 13 now, and she loves TikTok. She'd be on it 24/7 if I didn't make sure that she did other stuff with her life. Up until now, it's been annoying for me and my husband, but bearable. I feel like this is partially our fault, as we're big pranksters. However, the pranks we do are harmless, like waking someone up and telling them they're a little late when they're actually right on time, and then revealing it 5 minutes later. Or making an extra portion of food for them and then doing the salt bottle prank. We always thought that we've instilled these values into our kids to make sure that they have everyone laughing at the end. Recently, our daughter shattered all of our rules by pranking my 17-year-old son. While my son was asleep, she walked into his room with his electric razor and shaved off a massive part of his hair. He was angry and immediately went into the bathroom to see the damage, where she came up behind him and shaved a large part off the back of his hair. She'd set up a camera in the bathroom and I looked at the video. She was giggling and having a grand time while doing it. Now, to him, his hair is a sensitive topic, as a couple of years ago, he had pretty bad hair by his standards, and over the past couple of months, he started to get his hair looking good and feeling happy with it. He puts a lot of effort into his hair, and he was devastated when this happened. He was obviously devastated and didn't want to go to school for the upcoming year. This year was pretty much the last year he'd have to be a teenager, because after this, he wants to go to med school, and it'll be high stress for the next 10 years. Now to him, his year is ruined. My daughter was saying, "Well, it's just hair and you're not even a girl, get over it," which made me furious. Me and my husband discussed, and we decided that she knew exactly what she was doing and she deserved to be massively punished. We're taking away her phone and giving her a Nokia. We're also going to be taking away her laptop and only giving it back to work on homework. We've decided to block all websites other than Google Drive and her school website. If she needs to look up something, she can ask us. We're also going to be grounding her for the next year as well, or until his hair grows back and looks as good as it did to him. We're doing this because we want her to realize the damage is not over with a simple apology, and his year has been ruined, and his mental health may well be down the toilet. Her aunt, my sister, who has always favored her in my opinion, is completely on her side, saying, "Oh, it's just a joke and it was funny, and we need to give her a small punishment only." I feel like her punishment is deserved, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe I'm being too harsh, taking a 13-year-old's phone and contact with friends away. Am I the a-hole? Well, I'm a dad, and I'm just going to straight up say, no, 0 out of 10, you are not. Kids need to understand the punishment when they do bad things like this, and this is a serious thing to the son, so yeah, this is a big deal, and it needs to be punished accordingly. You're not the a-hole. I destroyed my boss, Karen. She'll regret messing with me after this. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss this one, and I will see you there.